Hello, wonderful people! I know that a lot of you are already playing the Demon Souls remake as we speak. Although the PlayStation 5 hasn't launched globally yet, so many of you are still waiting, and that includes myself. Of course, not everybody will buy the PlayStation 5 at launch anyways. In the meantime, let's explore the magic in the original Demon Souls. It will give you a rough idea of what we're going to see in the remake. It will also be fun to compare and contrast the differences once we all get our hands on the remake. I realized after using every spell, weapon and equipment in the original Demons is that every Souls game's source material is in this game. Almost every concept we saw with the subsequent Souls games originate here. Anyways, magic in Demons is divided into two schools, miracles and magic. They are two opposing worldviews and philosophies within the society of Boletaria, but as we discover later, both schools have the same origins and are basically the same thing but different approach. I'm only going to be covering offensive spells. Miracles have only one offensive spell, that's why you won't be seeing much from miracles. Magic is more accessible here as fire spells, soul spells all scale from just one stat, which is magic, so you don't need to sacrifice anything in order to get access to all the offensive spells. Catalysts are the equipment you need to cast magic with, the exception being the Talisman of Beasts. There are three catalysts. The first two are what you will be using most of the time, that's the wooden and silver catalysts. The silver catalyst's damage is a tad bit less but increases your MP by 20%. The silver catalyst is what I believe you'll be using most of the time, but picking any of the two is a matter of preference. The last one is the insanity catalyst. This catalyst halves your MP, in return you get higher damage output. In my view, the extra damage you get is not worth it. You'll be starved for MP all the time and that's just frustrating. I think it has situational uses, maybe at super high level characters, but even then I'll go for the Talisman of Beasts. And since you need a boss soul to create this catalyst, you'll be sacrificing two spells for this. Other items that will increase your damage output and are a must-have for dedicated spellcasters are the Ring of Magical Sharpness, the Crisp Blade, and the Monk's Head Wrap. I'm not using the head wrap here because in order to get it, you need to play as the Yellow Monk boss and beating another online player. This is impossible to do on the PlayStation 3 now due to the shutdown of the servers. Okay, let's now look at the fire spells in Demons. Flame Toss and Fire Spray are the most basic fire spells. Low MP cost, low damage, high sustain. Fire Spray starts off being really weak but becomes super powerful at high levels of magic. It's the lowest MP costing spell in the entire game and can be constantly fired by holding the button down. It's like the closest you can get to a shooter game in Demons. It's also unique in that you can move around while using it. The only spell that can do that in the entire game. You can actively evade attacks while continuing your assault. A very good spell indeed. Flame Toss is just another generic single target ranged fire attack. On the other hand, Fireball is a straight upgrade to Flame Toss. Uses more MP, also takes up 2 attunement slots, but it's way more damaging. It can hit multiple enemies due to its AoE damage, and it's definitely one of the better spells in Demons. Ignite is a close range spell. It's the equivalent of Combustion from the Soul series. Its damage output is good, but the fact that you have to hug the enemy in order to get a hit in makes it a very risky spell indeed. It has a long recovery and cannot be spammed quickly enough. It might be useful for PvP though. Let's see how this spell evolves in the remake. The last fire spell is Firestorm, maybe the strongest magic spell in the entire series, no exaggeration here. It's featured in all the subsequent Souls games, but nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to how powerful this is. It can one-shot bosses in NG Plus and beyond. That is just ridiculous, but I gotta admit, I had a lot of fun using it. Although it's a bit random in how it works because of the hitbox, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this spell in the remake. It still looks fabulous in the original Demon Souls, an 11-year-old game, so yeah, I can't wait to see it in action in the remake. Let's hope they tweak it so it stays powerful but not overtuned. Next up are the soul spells. The first two are the Soul Arrow and the Soul Ray. Similar to Flame Toss and Fireball, Soul Ray is a straight upgrade to Soul Arrow. Both are ranged spells that do magic damage, and enemies in general have weaker magic resistances than fire, which is useful. Soul Ray, in my opinion, is the most useful spell in the game. It works in every situation, making it a very practical option. It can pierce through enemies, resulting in multiple enemies getting hit with only one projectile, and it pierces through shields as well. Its universal application is why every accomplished mage will have it equipped at all times. Next spell is the Homing Soul Arrow. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this spell. Here, at least in the original Demons, it's bad. Its super bad tracking and limited range makes it almost a useless spell. Never use it in the remake if it's anything like here. The last soul spell is the Soul Sucker, a very unique spell. It never made it into the later games, and that's for a very good reason. It one-shots every non-boss enemy. Yeah, that sounds crazy, but the drawback here is its super duper long animation and literal non-existent range. In PvP, it works in a very different and peculiar way. If you manage to pull it off, despite its crappy range, you de-level the enemy player. Yeah, that's another reason this never made it to the later games. And since you can't reset your stats in Demons, you can summon a friend and let him de-level you so you can change your stats. Your friend gets a ton of souls, and you get to optimize your stats. Win-win. This spell was exploited so much as it's basically screaming, exploit me. If this stays in the remake, never ever go AFK while online. You may come back to find a fresh new character at the end game. The last three magic spells are the status effect spells: Acid, Poison, and Death Cloud. Acid works only in PvP, a very trolly spell that breaks enemy equipment. Poison, not surprisingly, inflicts poison. Death Cloud inflicts plague. I was very surprised how good these spells actually are, as they are usually very crappy in the later games. They trigger instantly, they linger for a very long time. That's why it's better to cast it in front of you and then bait enemies to run into them. They can be area denial spells in PvP. Very useful indeed, because you'd need all the help you get while you're a spellcaster, and it will disorient enemy players and make them panic as they try to heal. Death Cloud is only one in two ways to trigger Plague in Demon Souls. The Baby Nail, a dagger, can cause it as well, but it's much easier to trigger with Death Cloud. Plague lasts for freaking 10 minutes. That's longer than most online interactions, so the player enemy must heal it in order to stop it. They can't just wait it out like other effects. Funnily enough, you can poison and plague an enemy at the same time. Seems a lot of fun to me, as you can make a build that revolves around inflicting status effects. Finally, we get to our only miracle in this video: God's Wrath. The original Wrath of the Gods as it's known in later games. I'm comfortable to say that this is the second most ridiculous, overpowered spell in Demon Souls, coming after Firestorm. It has more practical uses though than Firestorm, as it's super useful against mobs of enemies. The range is out of this world. Its reach is so far that you can consider it as a ranged spell. And it hits vertically as well, so you can clear a whole section of an area by just using it once. I can't even begin to grasp how it can be countered in PvP. We have to wait and see about this. Interestingly, if you use the Ring of Sincere Prayer, which increases miracle damage and cast time, you'll see this. It's the first animation for the gesture Praise the Sun. The story behind it is interesting as well. The higher ups in Sony didn't like the gesture and asked for it to be scrapped, But the genius Miyazaki saved the day. You know, he's the director of Demons. He slipped it in using this obscure method and they never knew about it. And now it's the most recognizable Souls gesture in the world. Saying that Miyazaki is a genius is an understatement. So, these are all the offensive spells in the game. I'll cover them again once I play the remake and see how different they are. Meanwhile, let me know what's your favorite spells in Demons in the comment section below. Until then, see ya in my next video.